On the eve of the opening weekend of new Premier League and La Liga seasons, I'm joined by Euan McTear, sub-editor of Madrid-based publication MARCA. Firstly, for Grand Old Team, I think for a player with the sheer volume of interest, such as James Rodriguez, it's wise to gather more than one opinion. So, Euan, thanks very much for joining me. I'm sure you're a very busy man. And firstly, just in regard to the business of the deal, it's a 2-year deal with the option of a third if the club want to do so. The transfer fee is reported to be in the region of 22 million, despite James being in the last year of his contract at Madrid. So what were your thoughts on the move, and do you feel like it's a good deal on the behalf of Everton?
Yeah, it's strange that we're talking about it just now. Obviously, it's been confirmed this week, but it feels like this has been in the works for weeks, for a month. We knew James was going to be leaving Real Madrid this summer. Things didn't go well last year when he was back there. He just basically was excluded from the squad by the end of things. He didn't even travel for the Manchester City game at the end. So we knew he was going to leave. He'd been linked with Atletico Madrid for a little bit, but that wasn't going to happen. And yeah, Everton was always just there in the background, wasn't it, as an option because of the Ancelotti link, but also just for other reasons as well, I think. I think a move to the Premier League interested him when he was looking at clubs in the Premier League where he might have a role where he might fit in. Everton made sense. And now this week it's finally been confirmed. But it's something that we've all kind of been getting our heads around for a few weeks already now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we are certainly excited to see him finally make that move to the Premier League, because honestly, I feel like it's seemingly been every single year since he sort of broke through, even at Porto, and obviously, of course, after he scored that brilliant goal at the 2014 World Cup and won the Golden Boot. You mentioned that obviously that Ancelotti link is huge, and as someone based in Madrid, I'm sure you can offer a really interesting perspective on this. James scored 18 times in 51 matches under Carlo Ancelotti at both Real and Bayern Munich. He was directly involved in, I believe, 28 goals in 32 league games with Ancelotti as his boss. There are many examples throughout football of players blossoming under certain managers. You've got the likes of Ricardo Carvalho under Jose Mourinho, and another example that springs to mind is Nico Cranchar and Harry Redknapp. But from your experiences, what do you think it is about Ancelotti that brings the best out of James?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, the Ancelotti James thing sometimes is a little bit overplayed, When you look at it, if you look at the players that Ancelotti has given the most appearances to over his career, James doesn't even make the top 100. He's about 101, 102. Even Alan, who's just signed for Everton as well, Alan has played more matches for Ancelotti than James has. It's actually a very short time. They've been together just the 1 year. They coincided at Real Madrid, a very short spell after he moved to Bayern Munich too, before Ancelotti left there. So, as you even mentioned, 51 matches. I mean, many players in one full season will play more than 51 matches for a coach. So the sample size isn't actually as big as we might think, but it is true when they coincided, that 14-15 season, James' first one at Real Madrid, Ancelotti's second of his 2 years there. James was brilliant, and it's also sometimes said that Ancelotti builds a team around James. He wants to do that at Everton. I don't quite believe that, because when you look at what happened at Real Madrid, he certainly didn't build the team around James. If you look at the starting 11 players from that season, yeah, James was up there. He was one of the most important, but there was a good 5 or 6 players more important than James in that lineup. So James that season, he played in a number 10 role where he likes. He played on the right, he played on the left, and he scored and assisted goals from all of those positions. So, and I think that's encouraging news for Everton fans. It's not that the team is going to be built around James, and then if he gets injured, then you're sort of already set up for a player who's not there or anything like that. I think his versatility is sometimes underrated and not spoken about enough. Yes, he would love to play a number 10, classic number 10 role just behind a striker, but James can move around and be effective in other positions too, and he's already proven that with Ancelotti.
Okay, that's really interesting that you do say that, because I was hoping to get some sort of comment from yourself in that regard. Formation wise, as you said, James would be considered as a number 10, a playmaker, and it's really hard, I feel, to accommodate these players in the modern game, since 4-3-3 has become commonplace. I think that's been given rise by the success of Guardiola's time at Barcelona, of course. Um, you touched on it there. He played in numerous different positions at Madrid. I've spoken to people who said they would feel as if he was played out of position under the likes of Benitez and Zidane. So with Everton at the present moment, we certainly seem to have looked to have stabilised our starting 11, if you will. I feel like one of Ancelotti's biggest accomplishments since coming into the club was establishing that 4-4-2. Not necessarily gets the best out of the players that we've got, but we look stable in it. We don't look anywhere as near as fragile as we formerly did under, for example, under Marco Silva. So you touched on it a little bit there. How would you describe James's performances within different tactical systems?
Yeah, well, yeah, so we sort of touched on it, that his preferred position is at number 10 role, because the thing I think that is the best quality about James is those little touches, those little passes that set up the guys in front of him. He can get the ball and be crowded around and somehow find a way to move on to the next line in the team. And the easiest place, the most effective place to do that is, just around the half circle outside the penalty area. He's so effective around about there, even with crowded defences. And some of his best games for Real Madrid came against teams that went to the Bernabeu and put 5 players, 6 players, 7 players all in the box to try and just get away with maybe a sneaky draw, or maybe just come out not embarrassed. And those were the games where James was maybe the most useful, because you needed someone to pick those locks, and he could do that. And yeah, like I said, if you're central, close to the goal, then you can be more effective doing that than if you're on one of the wings. But he can do it on the wings as well. You mentioned the 4-3-3 sort of system. That's what Real Madrid have played for the past few years, and he maybe hasn't quite worked at Real Madrid, but I don't think it's a tactical thing. When he has had good matches, he's been able to do it from one of the 3 midfield positions, or on occasion he's played as a left player on a sort of forward 3, but maybe drifting a little bit. So honestly, I think his versatility is underrated. It's going to be interesting to see where he does fit in exactly at Everton, especially with it being a different kind of league. Tactically, in many senses, it's a different kind of league. So yeah, we'll see exactly where he goes. But I really expect that we'll see him in all sorts of positions over the season, because, like you say, there is maybe a defined starting lineup that you'll see this season. But you know how long a season is, especially this season with so many games packed tight together. Ancelotti's going to have to rotate his team. He's going to have to rotate his tactics a little bit as well, and that's why I think we'll see James in some games in this position, some games in that position.
Yeah, definitely. And with signings such as Alan, as you said, and Decore coming in from Watford, I agree with that. I certainly do think there's going to be a degree of trial and error in regards to what formation fits the team best. And do you feel like putting James in a midfield with, for example, Alan and Decore, who are just by default going to adopt more defensive responsibility, that's obviously going to free James up for a more creative role within the team, and give him a free license to be that attacking influence within the team? Do you feel like, again, that's something that's going to see James flourish?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we've talked about the versatility of James, but he is not a defender, by any stretch of the imagination. Even when he's playing in midfield positions, he's not the kind of midfielder that likes to track back, that likes to get back, and that's fair enough. That you can usually work. You need players like that whose job is at the other end of the pitch, and if they do that job, then everything's okay. If you have a couple of guys in behind, and yeah, maybe sometimes with the 4-3-3, when he has played in that midfield 3, sometimes he is expected to drop back and help, and maybe that's where he hasn't impressed Zidane in that sense, because he's a coach who likes to have Modric and Kroos in those positions, who can create, are some of the best passers as well in world football. But Kroos and Modric both always tracking back when they have to. James isn't quite like that. But like you say, if Everton have the foundation behind him that allows him to worry less about these kind of things, then it's perfect. He can go and do his thing at one end, and let the others take care of the dirty work behind them, and it could work pretty well.
You'd really like to think so, and I personally feel this could be Everton's answer. I think we've been longing for a creative midfielder since Mikel Arteta left to go to Arsenal all those many years ago. Obviously, Ross Barkley being here and since moved on to Chelsea, but still, I don't feel like he ticked everybody's boxes in that sense of being, a true number 10. As you touched on it there, the Premier League is different. There are many top creative midfielders within the Premier League. De Bruyne, Merseyside, another player that the former Real Madrid man. You've got Hakim Ziyech coming in to Chelsea there, and the likes of Bruno Fernandes. How do you feel James Rodriguez stacks up in comparison?
Yeah, it's a good question, because depends what James Rodriguez. If it's a James Rodriguez of the last couple of years, then he's some way away from that. But when he was at his peak, 2014, obviously had that brilliant World Cup, had that great year with Real Madrid. That James Rodriguez could go toe to toe with any of them, I think. Again, the game's evolved a little bit since then, but this is the thing. The Premier League has evolved as well, hasn't it? You talk about these players now. When we talk about the best players of the Premier League, we're talking about some of the names you just mentioned. We're not talking about players like Keane or Vieira anymore, are we? The Premier League has evolved. You've got a lot of foreign coaches have come in with interesting tactical ideas. You've got a lot of more and more technical players are being brought in, and maybe it isn't quite as physical as it was 10 years ago. And maybe now that's where some of these attacking talents really can thrive and dominate the entire league, and James fits that perfectly. It depends, like I said, what version of James we get. But think about this. This is the first time since 2014 that he's at a brand new club, starting a brand new adventure, in the sense of when he went to Bayern Munich, he was there on loan. He was basically there because he wasn't wanted by Real Madrid. So he was with Ancelotti, I'm sure. He was motivated to a decent extent, but Ancelotti soon left, and James knew he was only there on loan. This time, he's signed a permanent deal. He's there. He knows he's going to be there for the near future. So maybe we'll get the James of 2014, who's super motivated, who's ready to start something new. And you even just see it, some of the sort of just the bits that are coming out in the press, some of the interviews, some of the features featuring James over the past few days since the announcement. He seems excited. He seems happy. He seems ready for this. And I think we'll see at least the 2014 James in terms of motivation. And yeah, he's still got that talent there. So maybe we can see the James of 2014-15.
You'd certainly like to think so, because no doubt this is a player that is, in a technical sense, seriously gifted. And to finish on James, just for the Evertonians out there, of course, and I think one of the great pluses to come from this is that, obviously, I don't mind saying this, but Everton have been hugely punching beneath their weight these last few years. I mean, we haven't qualified for European football in a while, and a name such as Everton Football Club, in my opinion, should be qualifying for European football. Hopefully, this sort of recruitment goes a long way to making up that ground. But for the Evertonians out there, could you just let them know, what are the best aspects in James Rodriguez's game, and what player are Everton getting?
Yeah, well, like I've been saying, they're getting a player who just a few years ago was one of the very best in the world, one of the best at a World Cup. So you're getting a player who has all the technical quality you could ever hope for. It's there. He's still only 29. He's still got all that technical quality in his boots. But you're getting a player who's had a tough few years, who's lost motivation a little bit, like I've said before as well. Towards the end of the season last year at Real Madrid, he basically checked out. He literally said to Zidane he didn't want to be included in the last few squads of the season because he knew he wasn't going to play, and so Zidane didn't pick him. He didn't even travel to the last few games. So you're getting a player who's come through a bit of a difficult time, but has the talent there. And if you can just get the motivation, and that goes back to what I'm saying about 2014. This is the first time in 6 years that he's starting a brand new adventure. Maybe you do get a motivated player, and then you're also getting a marketing, gold mine really with Hammers as well. And we want to focus on what's going on in the football pitch, but it is something important. We all kind of know by now that the sort of myth of popular player pays off his transfer fee and shirt sales, that's not true. But there are some players on a certain level that can make an impact in the business side of the club, and James is one of them. If you look at his social media reach, after Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Neymar, next up's James. He is so popular in Colombia, in South America. We've even seen it this week with the announcements lighting up that big tower in Bogota, Times Square as well. There was a James advert. This is a player that can really reach around the world, and it doesn't necessarily lead to greater shirt sales, leading to greater income, but in the long term, it can have an effect. Next time Everton sit at the negotiating table with sponsors, with kit suppliers, the fact you've got Hammers, you can ask for that little bit more. So it goes back to what you're saying. Everton, maybe it's been a few difficult years. Everton, were traditionally one of the top 6 clubs. Now the top 6 doesn't include Everton, and maybe they're in danger of the top 8, not even including Everton, if they have another couple of bad seasons. But with a player like this, if you can do it on the pitch and bring some sort of attention off the pitch too, then Everton can really push on and start to break that top 8, top 7, top 6 again.
Definitely. You make some fantastic points there. And something else I wanted to get your opinion on from an Everton perspective. Obviously, the predecessor to Zinedine Zidane at Real Madrid was, of course, Carlo Ancelotti. So I'd just like to hear, what are your thoughts on Carlo Ancelotti at the present moment? Obviously, he did move on to Napoli, and although Gattuso taken over, it can be argued that Ancelotti did set Napoli up for that cup win at the end of the last season. His move to Everton, of course, is another one of those things, like you've just mentioned, that certainly raises the profile of the club. Someone of that calibre, someone of that stature, someone who is a proven winner no matter where he goes. That just might be what Everton need in order, as you say, to break into that bracket again of being one of the top clubs in the country. So from his time at Madrid and what you may have seen of him now, what are your thoughts on Carlo Ancelotti?
Yeah, I really like him. I think there's few people in football who don't like Carlo Ancelotti because he's a nice guy. He's a friendly guy. He's a lot of fun as well, and I think that's what he brings to a club. Is he's a manager. He's a motivator. Let's not forget he is a brilliant tactician too. But one of his main assets is he can get players on his side and get them going, and that's really what he did at Real Madrid. He came in at Real Madrid after Jose Mourinho had been there, and he burned a few bridges in the dressing room. He'd created a bit of a stir, forcing Iker Casillas out. And Ancelotti came in and managed the situation perfectly. Kept Casillas the captain, club legend. He kept him in the mix by giving him matches in cup competitions and sticking with another goalkeeper in the league and mixing it around and trying to keep Casillas happy and therefore some of his allies in the dressing room happy. And that's the kind of thing Ancelotti can do. He can manage some of the bigger egos in sport. And at Everton, every club in the Premier League now is very international. You have players coming from all kinds of backgrounds. You have players coming at different levels, different stages of their career. And Ancelotti, I think, is brilliant for all of that. He can get a young player and get him motivated, get him breaking into the first team. And then he can also look after veterans and explain to them how much they'll play, how much they'll be rotated. And I think that's just one of his main qualities, is being able to manage the people of a dressing room and then also the footballers, of course.
Definitely. That's fantastic. And I'm sure with young talent, there are plenty of young players within that Everton dressing room, the likes of Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Anthony Gordon, a local lad coming through as well. That'll be music to both Evertonians' ears and the young players' ears, and that hopefully Ancelotti can unlock their top class potential.